Hello Internet, welcome back to 80s Vampire Month, and this time round, as this backlit image attests, and nothing says 80s like backlighting and fog, we're going to be looking at Near Dark, pretty much the epitome of cult vampire movie. It came out in theatres in 1987, just a couple of months after Lost Boys, which smashed it, and Near Dark pretty much sank without a trace. On its opening weekend, it grossed a little over $630,000. It went on to make 3.4 million, according to the internet here, and its budget was $5 million. So, yeah, it tanked. It tanked bad. It was the last movie to be released by DEG, the De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. They went bankrupt, and as such, they had nothing in the tank to promote this, to advertise it. And without that promotion machine behind the movie, the only hope it's got is word of mouth and home release. And this piece of cinema, this wonderful piece of vampire cinema, really did find its home in home release and on DVD release, VHS, and there are some people for whom that makes it a very personal film to them. And like a band that you discover for yourself, when a film's that personal to you, you love it slavishly. And I loved this film slavishly. I held it above Lost Boys. I would have held it on a par with Fright Night, which I love for 80s vampires movies, but I've got to be true to the movie as I see it now. I watched it last night, and whilst I won't slam it, it is not without its flaws. So I'm going to be really harsh on this movie while still recommending it. It's a wonderful piece of 80s vampire action, but it's got issues. So, like the kid in the class that I know can do better than all the other rich kids, the kid who hasn't had all the easy breaks, I'm going to be harder on this one because I know it can do better. Kathryn Bigelow directed it. It's her first directing gig. She had a really hard time getting this gig. The producer was not convinced about giving the reins to a woman, and I get the strong impression that there were people over her shoulder the whole time. But she wrote this with Eric Red, who also scripted The Hitcher, and they wanted to make a Western movie, but Westerns were not in vogue. Vampires were coming into vogue. Some sort of mashup was suggested, and essentially they went for it. To be perfectly honest, I think this mashup of styles is probably much more successful than a straight Western ever would have been, and it certainly wouldn't have put her on the map in the same way that Near Dark did. And thank God it did put her on the map, because she gave us Strange Days, which is so under the radar, a fucking awesome movie, and Point Break. But we're talking vampires. What this movie does is not reinvent the vampire, it strips it right back down to basics. And with that, you can see its influence on Abel Ferrara's The Addiction. With the Western mashup, obviously you can see a lineage in From Dusk Till Dawn and also John Carpenter's Vampires. But for all the grand myth making that you can have in a Western about, I don't know, the lone cowboy, the untamed frontier, and for all the grand myth making you can have in a vampire story, this is really nuts and bolts, stripped right down to basics, and it does away completely with all the romanticism associated with Westerns and vampire movies. And you get a group of vampires who, to my mind, are like the trailer trash cousins to Kiefer Sutherland's group of well-to-do, sort of punky, fast-living vampires in The Lost Boys. These guys have been around for a lot longer. They've seen a lot more. These are grunge to The Lost Boys cock rock. It's been well written about that at the time Catherine Bigelow was in a relationship with James Cameron. He'd just come off Aliens, so he suggested that she use some of the cast that he'd put together. Even Michael Biehn was approached, but wasn't ultimately too hot on the project. What we do get is Jeanette Goldstein, we get Bill Paxton, and the legendary Lance Henriksen, and they're coming so hot off Aliens that I get the feeling that they were almost acting like a theatre group. They bonded, their acting muscles were well warmed, so they were ready to go with new material and a fast turnaround. And they're able to shortcut the relationships between their characters so much, I think, that they sell that this band of vampires has been on the road for years and years and years and years and years in very minimal scenes. You just buy it. You absolutely buy it. I'm going to level with you and tell you all the things I don't buy that they're selling from watching it last night. So the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia have come off, and there are some things that I take issue with. The central relationship with Caleb, the human, who gets turned or half-turned by May, the beautiful Jenny Wright. I don't buy their relationship at all. She was out hunting, he was out hunting. The opening scene, I love. The gender expectations reversed. He's the buck cowboy out to get some, and she's the pretty ingenue with the cut-off jeans, looking so vulnerable and doe-eyed, and all the time she's the fucking tiger and he's the puppy. But let's not forget, she loses track of time and begs him to take her back before dawn, to the point where she's screaming at him to do so. He thinks that, to quote him, that her daddy's going to give her a whooping if she gets home late. Let's not forget that he pulls over the van while she's palpably fearful, stops the engine, puts the keys down his shirt, and basically blackmails her into kissing him, at least kissing him, before he'll take her any further. What a prick! And I don't see anything that he displayed that would make her change her mind and decide that she doesn't want to kill him. So I don't buy their entire relationship, which is unfortunate, because that's supposed to be the heart of the movie, the pull for Caleb's character between the family he's left behind, father and younger sister, and the new family with May, this proto-girlfriend, possibly for all eternity, under the wing of Lance Henriksen's Jesse and his vampire wife, Diamondback, and the son, the fucked up son that they've created, Homer, who is an old man now forever trapped in what, a 12, 13-year-old boy's body, in a nod to Anne Rice's Claudia. Homer's made May as a companion, hoping to, if he chooses someone young, that eventually she'll get older in mind but stay young in body and be with him forever. None of this is actually in the movie, mind you. This is all stuff that you can intuit and backstory that you fill in. The interactions between the vampire characters invite you to create these wonderful backstories for all of them and the lives that they've lived. Because this group of vampires, this nomadic, quasi-Mad Max tribe, by now are running out of bolt holes. civilization has got to such a point where there are computers, there's law enforcement, there's CB radio, there's telephones. I can imagine that way back when they could roll into a city, rent the finest rooms, dine for a few weeks, move on at their leisure. These guys now have to stop, find prey, kill, then dispose of the bodies or burn them, because leaving murder scenes all over the place will just alert the authorities, the federal authorities, to serial killings, and then they'll have the feds on their tail. Then they have to steal a new vehicle, and they have to fucking hightail it to the next place where they can safely sleep during the day, and then go out again, travel to the next place, constantly moving like sharks. This isn't the life, trust me, I don't believe that they've been leading for decades, if not hundreds and hundreds of years. The title of the movie, Near Dark, I think pretty much, it describes so many things, but I also think it describes this band of vampires that have basically been harried down to their last reserves of energy. And whereas before they were masters, now they feel, I think, like foxes hounded by law enforcement and the modern world around them, that they can revel in, but then they have to run from on a nightly basis. I'm going to say it, I don't like the blood transfusion to cure vampirism. That's just me, that's my problem. Every vampire movie, every vampire novel, just like every werewolf movie and every werewolf story or every werewolf comic or whatever the hell, computer game has to come up with their own rules. This movie says that if you're bitten, you'll turn. If you turn, sunlight will kill you. If sunlight doesn't kill you, you'll live forever. But if you get a blood transfusion, you're back to human again. Okay, those are the rules. My issue with it is my issue. I'm going to nitpick here, but at the end of the movie, Homer, the old vampire in the young boy's body, wants to keep and turn Caleb's little sister. She's about the same age as he is physically. And there's a stretch to understanding that kind of thought process to me. There is absolutely no way he's going to be physically attracted to her, because he's not a pedophile. He's a grown man trapped in a young boy's body. The only way I can work it is he's playing a long game, and he'll turn her now as a girl and wait for her to be 40, 45, 50, however old he is at the time, and basically wait for her to come round to the idea that, oh, well, there's only two of us in the world, so we might as well. There's some serious Stockholm syndrome that he's betting on there, but he's willing to sacrifice pretty much fucking everything, including his life and the lives of those around him, for this one little girl. Don't buy it. And here's the last bit of harshness. Some of the scenes are really poorly executed, really poorly edited, to the point where I don't think that, in fact, they got enough coverage when they were shooting footage. So I'm thinking of towards the end, where Caleb and his sister Sarah are running across the fields and the vamps are in the car coming upon them. Caleb trips and tells Sarah to go ahead. And then you have shot of Sarah running, shot of Caleb running, shot of car driving, back to a shot of Sarah going no, back to a shot of Caleb screaming let it go or whatever, back to then now a shot of the car driving off. The geography of scenes like that sometimes completely falls apart, which is very strange, because the blocking of other scenes is absolutely phenomenal. And we're going to get now to the standout scene of the scene that makes it legendary, the barroom scene. There's no point me really going into too much detail about what happens in the barroom scene. If you haven't seen this movie, check it out. For this scene alone, it's worth it. If you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What I will note is that I think that's the moment in the film that Lance Henriksen becomes a monster. You can see the centuries on him. It's the moment where Bill Paxton, as an actor, it's widely reported that he ad-libbed a lot of his lines there. Finger licking good, this is shit kicker heaven, I hate it when they ain't been shaved, he tasted like a dead possum. I imagine that they possibly just after blocking the scenes, they did a few takes. They all had fun with it. Paxton definitely had fun with it. There's one of the guys in the bar must be a stuntman because Severin Paxton's character hits him and he flies back into the pool table, and the stuntman is obviously on a rig getting jerked back. That pool table hits him right in the small of the back. You can see the impact. I take my hat off to stunt men and women in the industry up and down the land. They do a fantastic job, but you can't tell me that that guy did not hurt himself. The title Near Dark, I think, alludes to the fact that the group of vampires, as I mentioned earlier, are very close to their own darkness, the end of their own lives, slowing down. They're weary, they're road weary. But it also alludes to the grey areas, the boundaries between pure day and pure night. And many others have said this a hell of a lot better than I could. But this is the area that May and Caleb find themselves in. She's only been a vampire for a few years, and I don't think she's completely bought into their nomadic vampire lifestyle. And there's a tug between what they've got and what they could have on both sides of the fence. And the film mainly exists in these dreamlike areas of just post-dusk or just pre-dawn, where light's either coming up or going down, and this woozy area in between where has he all of this boundary transgression, has he ever really actually been turned into a vampire? We don't know the rules here. The word vampire is never mentioned, so what he's actually becoming we call vampire, but for want of a better word. But the boundaries between that and human are very fluid, and you can return back to the human state very easily. And like the tides of the ocean or the lunar cycles, we spend a lot of our time in this half light and this neon light, because it's not the 80s without neon and fog. And for a low budget, first time directorial effort, I will forgive it all of its flaws and mistakes, because it gives you some sort of weird, grimy, stylish truth, it seems to. And I know that's ridiculous to say about vampires, but this is the closest vampires have ever seemed to out and out junkies. There's no romance to it whatsoever, and yet when you watch it and when you see them full-blooded, there's still an attraction, and there has to be an attraction to vampires, I think, to make it a successful vampire movie. But you have to be under no illusions that these vampires can rip your throats out and drink you dry. Vampires, to my mind, also, to be a successful vampire movie, have to be predators. These vamps, trust me, this might have come out a few months after The Lost Boys, these vamps are not going on Ferris wheels. These vamps are going for your throat. So, I just want to wind up with information that I read today about a massive bullet that was missed from the good old folks over at Platinum Dunes, who like to hoover up all our best loved movie properties and then shart them out again. Apparently there was a few years back, quite some years back, a Platinum Dunes Near Dark mooted. I'm going to have to read off the paper here because I want to quote this guy, Brad Fuller, producer. they were going to go ahead with this, and then Twilight came out. Brad Fuller said, "I think that Twilight was the same type of thing we were going for, although Near Dark was a much darker, sexier, rated R version of that. But I'm concerned that conceptually Near Dark and Twilight are too similar in terms of a vampire movie. For now, that movie is on hold." I'm just going to repeat that. Near Dark and Twilight are too similar in terms of a vampire movie. Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, horror fans the world over, we dodged a bullet. What the fuck? So that just leaves giving it its 80 score. Its 80 score out of 80 as to how 80s Near Dark is. And I judge this to be one backlit, multiple neon, one Tangerine Dream soundtrack out of 80. In other words, plenty 80s, but nowhere near the most 80s that we'll see in 80s Vampire Month.